Hi there everyone, this is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and we have an important update today about the case to reinstate the Bank of Canada. Now this past Monday, January 26th, a landmark ruling was made in a federal court on the Comer versus the Bank of Canada lawsuit. Constitutional lawyer Rocco Galati represented plaintiffs William Krem and Ann Emmett of Comer, the Committee on Monetary and Economic Reform. And to the surprise of many, they actually won. Now, what had happened was that the Crown kept appealing the ruling that this lawsuit against the central bank is legitimate and can proceed to the next step. So on Monday, the federal court actually upheld the lower court's decision that this lawsuit can indeed proceed. So to appeal now, the federal government would have to go all the way to the Supreme Court, which Rocco Galati doesn't think is going to happen. So first of all, let me just say a huge congratulations to William Krem and Ann Emmett and everyone there at Comer. This has been a long time in the works since we started covering this first back in 2011. So congratulations to everyone, and to Rocco Galati as well, who has a proud history of standing up to the federal government here in Canada. Now this really is a landmark achievement, and I look forward to seeing how these proceedings are going to advance from here. Now, to any of the viewers at home who are not really familiar with this case or with what's going on, I'll quickly break it down for you. The Bank of Canada used to loan federal, provincial, and municipal governments money that they would conjure up out of thin air. They still do this, but now the loans come with compound interest. And this interest accounts for nearly $20 billion a year. And these interest payments are actually going to international bankers. So it's the opinion of Comer that the Bank of Canada should refrain from charging interest on these loans and bypass the bankers and just simply loan money to the government interest-free. Now perhaps the best example of this kind of leadership actually comes from the Bank of Canada itself, from the former governor, James E. Coyne. And yes, we did actually have a governor of the Bank of Canada with the last name Coyne. Now, as the governor of the Bank of Canada from 1955 to 61, Coyne held unorthodox economic views that infuriated the chartered banks and the IMF. And all of this eventually got him in hot water with the Diefenbaker government, who eventually forced him to resign. Now, Coyne denounced foreign borrowing as detrimental to the well-being of Canadians. However, he didn't think that the solution was to just continue to print money. He said the general level of interest rates should be such as to encourage new savings each year equal to the level of new capital expenditures without large inflows of capital from abroad. That is, we should grow our economy with savings. That's why he denounced any kind of reckless money printing. He also said, much more money and credit and capital are made available when money is tight than when it is easy. Now, unlike some proponents of reinstating the Bank of Canada who tell us to just not worry about inflation, Coyne saw inflation as economically unsound and morally reprehensible. But he didn't support borrowing from abroad, and he did everything that he could to encourage domestic savings. And to the horror of the IMF, Coyne actually detached the Canadian loonie from the soon-to-be defunct Bretton Woods Agreement. Now, throughout his entire life, Coyne maintained that growth based mainly, if not entirely, on our production and savings would be sounder, more sustainable, and in the long run, larger. Now, unfortunately, after Coyne's forced departure, Keynesians took over the bank. And by the late 1970s, inflation had gotten out of control. And not to mention, instead of relying on domestic savings, well, they started borrowing from the international bankers, which ballooned our interest payments to the tune of now billions of dollars. And then in this classic example of controlling the left-right paradigm, Milton Friedman became the poster child for free markets, despite the fact that he has very anti-free market views. Now, he actually blamed the Great Depression on the fact that the Federal Reserve was not printing enough money. And he actually believed that the central banks have a role to play when it comes to determining interest rates. So now when somebody says that they have free market views, the general population thinks Milton Friedman and the Chicago School instead of Ludwig von Mises and the Austrian School. But times are changing, and the Austrian position is gaining more traction. But how do we reconcile this difference of opinions right now between organizations like Comer that want the Bank of Canada to make interest-free loans to the government, and also proponents of the Austrian School that just don't want any kind of central bank whatsoever? Well, in my opinion, I believe that even the non-central banking crowd can get behind and support this lawsuit, because a central bank in the hands of the government is better than a central bank in the hands of the Rothschilds. However, I am of the opinion that any central bank is merely going to be bought up again at some point by special interests. But there is a third solution here. We can force the Bank of Canada to stop colluding with international bankers, but we can also give Canadians the option to use whatever money they desire. So if a people's central bank inflates into oblivion, like many Austrians claim, well then there's no worries, because in a free society, Canadians would just have the option to opt out. And the reinstated Bank of Canada currency can just be one of many currencies that's being used in a free market. And this would actually end up subjecting the central banks to supply and demand and competition. So this means that the bank would actually have to work in our favor and conform to consumer demand, as it were, or else they'd just end up facing bankruptcy. Now, although some in Comer may disagree with this analysis, I really don't see how forcing Canadians to use a central bank, regardless of who owns it, is going to help anyone. After all, when you talk about taxation or a central banking monopoly, you're essentially putting a gun to the heads of each and every Canadian, and you're telling them that, hey, it's going to have to be my way or the highway. But that's the methods that the elites use. That's how the international bankers have made their way to the top. The power to create money and the power to force people to use it. So while I do congratulate Comer on their lawsuit, and I wish them all of the best of luck, let's not forget the two sides of this equation. The power to create money should be in an open field to any entrepreneur that thinks that they can provide society with the best medium of exchange. Now, the power to force people to use money is this great challenge that we face. So if or when Comer wins this lawsuit, I really hope that the new governor of the reinstated Bank of Canada doesn't just become drunk with power. Otherwise, we'll just end up right back in the same place where we started. A coercive monopoly telling Canadians what they think is best for them. I say let's just open it up to a truly free market once and for all. So thanks for watching, folks. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. And subscribe to us here on YouTube if you haven't already. And please check the links in the description to where you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And stay tuned, guys. We're going to have a lot more video reports coming very soon to pressfortruth.ca.